with those weapons and his ability to be accurate and get the ball on time and play behind this offensive line, I know Saquon had the highlight runs and the touchdowns were all on the ground, but some of the biggest moments of the game, the single biggest individual plays of the game, came through the air.
Welcome to the NFL on Fox podcast, presented by Verizon, the NFL powered by Verizon 5G. I am your host, Dave Helman, and we made it. It is officially Super Bowl week. There's always that weird wait with the week off where we got to talk about the game, but the game's not close enough, et cetera, et cetera. Not anymore. It is Super Bowl week. The Eagles and the Chiefs are getting to New Orleans. We will have opening night to worry about, and we can get in to the rhythm of game week once again. I am looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the show that we have for y'all here. Not going to call it an early preview because it is game week, but we did take the time to take a look at this game a little bit in advance. I mean, we have known the participants for a minute, and we got some help from the best person possible, our guy, Greg Olsen. He's been stopping by the show all season long, so gracious with his time. And he did it again to help us preview this Super Bowl 59 matchup, a game that he called a couple years ago when it was Super Bowl 57. So who better to offer some insight into the matchup than Greg? Really enjoyed this conversation. Kick off your Super Bowl week with us. Check it out.
All right, Greg, I'm calling this the deja vu Super Bowl, man. Especially if I'm talking to you, I think it's very apropos. You obviously called Chiefs Eagles back a couple years ago, and here we are again. And I feel a little bad for what I'm about to say, but when I look at this game, it feels very similar to what it was last time, which is I think the Eagles have so many advantages when you just break down both of these rosters, look at the edges and the different makeups of these teams. You look at it and you feel like overall they are a stronger team, in my opinion, at least. But then you look over on the other side, and it's Patrick Mahomes, and it's Andy Reid, and it's Steve Spagnuolo, and all those guys who have been a part of this success. And the Chiefs obviously managed to find a way to win this game last time. So we know it's possible, but that's where I'm at right now, where, I mean, taking down this Eagles roster feels like it is a monumental challenge, and it's a testament to the Chiefs that they were able to do it last time.
Yeah, I mean, I think just last week, preparing for the NFC championship game and multiple times this year, calling Philadelphia Eagle games, I've said this is probably the best roster in football. And I felt that way probably since the halfway point in the season when they got defense really came around and the Zach Bonds and Jalen Carter became the dominant force and Nolan Smith and maybe some names going into the season maybe weren't household names. They were really struggling on defense last year. And then obviously the complete turnaround with Vic Fangio and then of course the offensive line and the weapons, and that's been well covered. So I think if this is, and this is what's so cool about football, right? Is the best roster, the best team, they don't always win every game. Often the teams that play at the biggest moments, right? And that's really been the entire case for this run that they've had in Kansas City. It's they haven't always had the best teams. They haven't always looked the best on paper throughout the entire regular season and even at times in the postseason. But they keep it, and at the end, when you need a critical fourth down conversion, they get it. When you need a critical fourth down stop, they get it. When you need to get a critical take, like they just make the plays and they have that championship DNA. So I think if they play a best of five, if this was MLB baseball or the NBA, and it really was, all right, we're going to play this over a series where one bad night, one tough day kind of gets washed aside and it's over a larger sample size, then typically the best teams do kind of rise and win.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
in the NFL, man, you just got to be good one time. And until someone proves that they can beat Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, and then when in those critical moments, it's just been a really hard code to crack.
It's funny. I doubt the Eagles anticipated that they would be playing the Chiefs again if they got back to this point, or maybe they did, considering the run the Chiefs have been on. But it's very funny that you add Saquon Barkley, you supercharge this offense with something that, I mean, they had gotten production from their running backs in the past. Miles Sanders had a great year the last time they were in this game. But I'll be honest, I had forgotten they only got 45 rushing yards from their running backs in that game. It was mostly Jalen Hurts. I think all their running backs combined were averaging 2.5 yards a carry against the Chiefs. I'm guessing that's not going to be the case this time around. I mean, I can't predict it to a certainty, but it feels like this running game is going to have a lot more success. I'm curious, and it makes me think about what we talked about heading into the conference championship games, making teams drive the field, avoiding explosive plays. Like, do the Chiefs go into this game with the mindset of like, look, Saquon Barkley's probably going to finish with his yards, but as long as he's not finishing in the end zone and breaking out for these 40, 50, 60-yard gains, we can find a way to win this game. Because I don't know if I believe that you're bottling up this rushing attack the way they did last time.
Well, it's kind of funny. You look back to our conversation last week, and you asked me, all right, what are the big keys for Washington? How are they going to pull this, what a lot of people thought was an upset? And I said, well, you can't turn the ball over 5 times like you did the first time and expect to win. They turned the ball over 4. And you can't give up big plays. And sure enough, the first play of the
First play
game,
from scrimmage, yeah.
first play from scrimmage, Saquon Barkley pops it. So that's been that formula, right? And it's their ability to generate the explosive plays. You look back to the Super Bowl a couple years ago, they had the deep explosive play to A.J. Brown. They scored 35. It was a 38-35. They scored 35 and they lost. So that the offense wasn't the problem. You mentioned Miles Sanders. He had a really good year for them on the ground, but what Saquon Barkley is doing, his production all year long, what the explosives he's been able to have, the long touchdowns in the playoffs, that's what is the difference maker with this. This is a whole different animal now. Not taking anything away from 2 years ago with Miles Sanders, but Saquon Barkley is he is a special, special player. And with this offensive line, and with this skill group, and with everyone's fear of having the ball thrown over their head by A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, the room he gets to run in, the runs he gets, I can't stress enough that Saquon Barkley for this Eagles offense is very different than Saquon Barkley that we saw the last couple of years in New York. It's just not the same situation to go with a generational talent. So I think Spags is going to have a good plan. He has made a living being a great regular season, postseason, Super Bowl defensive coordinator. They're going to need to keep these explosives down. And there's a lot of people that think, hey, to control the run game, I'm going to play with one high safety and really load the box. And really what we've come to know is you might give up more yards in light boxes. You might give up more yards on a per play basis, but your ability to limit explosive plays really goes down when you play a lot more too high, more pass coverage shell. So I'm going to be very interested to see how Spags decides to build this game plan, because too many guys at the line of scrimmage, one wrong fit, and Saquon's gone.
Fun stat that I looked up. Chiefs have allowed 42 explosive runs, which is typically like 10 or 12 yards or more. It's 4th best in the league. But I took it a step further. I wanted to see how many like truly big runs they've allowed, like 20 plus yards. They've only given up 7 runs of 20 or more yards this entire season. And the only true like house call that they've given up, they gave up a 62-yard touchdown to Jerome Ford when they played Cleveland in the middle of the year. But it just hasn't happened this year. And by the way, 3 of those 7 runs were from quarterbacks and designed runs to receivers. So like when you're talking about a true carry attempt from a running back, just 4 times this year. So if the Eagles can do this to a Steve Spagnuolo defense, I think not that we need to see anything else to know that they're impressive, but it's a true testament to how incredible they are. I mean, Saquon has as many 60-yard touchdowns on the year as the Chiefs have allowed 20-yard rushes all season long. It's incredible.
It is. And I think, a key is I think where Washington really struggled last week, you saw it on Saquon, the first touchdown, they just couldn't tackle him. They had bodies at the ball and they just couldn't get him on the ground. But then the second touchdown, albeit down there close in the tight red zone, they just had really bad gap integrity. I mean, Frankie Louvu is unblocked up the middle, and whoever the defensive left end was working on Lane Johnson, so on the right side of the offense, that was the side that Saquon was able to escape out, avoid Frankie Louvu, and he was untouched to the right pylon. If that defensive end there just sets a firm edge, keeps his helmet on the boundary, and forces that ball up, it's a tackle for no loss into the face of Frankie Lulu. So like that's the difference between a no gain or loss run rush and a touchdown. And if you want to play against Saquon Barkley, the second one guy is out of a gap, he finds it and he's gone. The second you're not sound in how your coverage fit down into your fronts, he's gone. Like you just can't make those mistakes. And we saw Washington make a ton of them. That's every guy say, I'm going to make the tackle. I'm going to make and you can't play Saquon Barkley one-on-one. It is an 11-man tackle plan. And I think that's something that Spags has to really stress. Not, I'm sure he does every week, but like that is critical when you're playing against a back like Saquon with this offensive line. You don't know exactly where the ball is going to pop. So you can't make every tackle. You just have to make your tackle.
The old adage goes, you have to earn the right to pressure the quarterback. You've got to stop the run well enough to put Jalen Hurts in those situations. But when the Chiefs have gotten there in these playoffs, they pressured CJ Stroud and Josh Allen at a rate of 49% in these two playoff games, which is completely crazy to me, especially considering specifically with the Bills, the offensive line that they have. This is another, obviously, it's one of the most impressive offensive lines in the league in Philadelphia. Is that, can you replicate that against a mobile quarterback and with everything that the Eagles have going on? I'm curious to see the game plan that puts pressure on Jalen Hurts without just blitzing the hell out of him, which often doesn't work anyway because of the options the Eagles have in the passing game.
Yeah, I think you have to be careful. I do think there is. I thought Jalen Hurts played one of his best games of the season last week. I know
Absolutely.
a lot of questions going in about the knee and the mobility. It didn't look to me like he was injured at all. I thought he ran the ball well. He moved. I know he bought some time a couple times. They ended in throwaways, which is not the end of the world. Where his issues had lied over time, it was kind of an interesting kind of an interesting situation. The fact that you have this really athletic, physically talented run quarterback who could run, and traditionally you'd say keep him on his spot, don't let him out of the pocket, contain him, make him play from the pocket. But then when you look at his efficiency and you watch him as a passer, when he's in the pocket on time, in rhythm, he is highly effective. It might not be the high volume that we see across the league in today's day and age because of their ability to play with a lead, and obviously Saquon and all of that's been well covered. But he is a very accurate on-time quarterback. Where his struggles have been is when he does get moved, especially to his left side, and he turns into a scrambler. He takes a lot of sacks. He doesn't generate a lot of the big plays in the scramble drill downfield. That's kind of been the really interesting kind of case study of Jalen Hurts. So I think if I'm Kansas City, I want pressure up the middle. I want to move him off his spot, make him a throw off the spot. He's going to hurt you as a scramble runner. That's obviously a big part of his game. And if you're not careful, he's going to pick up first downs and he's going to convert with his legs. But make him beat you as a scramble passer. Because I think in the pocket as a passer, as he showed last week, with those weapons and his ability to be accurate and get the ball on time and play behind this offensive line, I know Saquon had the highlight runs and the touchdowns were all on the ground, but some of the biggest moments of the game, the single biggest individual plays of the game came through the air.
I'm completely with you. I mean, Jalen Hurts has been good this year, but I thought that was just a phenomenal performance and his best performance of the season. He
Yep.
obviously, with the exception of the turnover in that Super Bowl, he was phenomenal in that last game, and I'm guessing he's going to need to be this time around as well. On the flip side of this, there's always one question that I'm super excited to ask you, and this is that one here. You spent a ton of time on the line of scrimmage in the NFL, so I want you to tell me if I'm dumb, if I'm oversimplifying this. So I think one of the biggest keys to the Chiefs getting back to this game is the decision to move Joe Tooney out to left tackle. It had been a problem for him all year long. He's an incredible all-pro guard. Kicks out there. He's done a phenomenal job. They get back to this game. Now you go against an Eagles team that has Jalen Carter, who is quickly becoming one of the most disruptive defensive tackles in the NFL. Am I overthinking this if I'm like, ooh, Joe, maybe this is the week where I want you to go back to your old job? Because I feel a lot more stressed out about the pressure from the interior. And not to knock Josh Sweat, he's a fantastic edge rusher. But am I overthinking that if I'm wondering if the Chiefs tamper with their offensive line after Joe Tooney helped them get here at left tackle?
No, I think your reasoning is obviously super sound. I mean, the idea being let's put our best players against their best players and don't let their best players beat me. So I think from that standpoint, in a one-on-one type situation, I think it makes a lot of sense. I think, again, without really studying it, without really diving into like how this matchup plays out over the next 12 days or so, I think generally speaking, the rationale would be let's not move and make. So it's one thing for Tooney to move in and go back to his position, but now you got to put the next guy at left tackle who hasn't been playing and hasn't been getting the reps and hasn't been working. So now all of a sudden you've got two moving parts. I can, if I don't care who my guard is, I don't care if it's the best guard in the league or a rookie. I'm probably not going to spend a lot of time turning the protection away from Jalen Carter with in by any chance I get very often, right? I'm putting my center, I'm putting Creed Humphrey, I'm sliding the protection as often as I can to Jalen Carter, and I'm going to get four hands, four eyes, and get him stopped before he gets going. So now all of a sudden, if you do move one of your better linemen back to guard in Tooney, and he's part of the double team with Creed Humphrey, you have arguably your best two linemen now double teaming their best player, which makes sense. But now to your point, I got Nolan Smith and I got Sweat and I've got all these. I got Zach Bond when he comes up on the edge, and I've got all these other guys now playing against who, if I thought they were my best option at left tackle, they would have been in there the last,
Yeah,
however many
fair.
games, 7, 8 games or whatever I don't remember exactly when they moved them. But so the point is, if I know, okay, I got a tough matchup there on the inside at guard, I can scheme it, I can edge it, I can turn my protections, I can do something schematically to try to make sure I'm not just playing one-on-one all day in an inferior matchup, which frankly, most teams in the NFL are going to have a not very good matchup against Jalen Carter when they're one-on-one there on the interior. So I don't think that's unique to Kansas City. Continue to give Mahomes the confidence he has on the edges, allow him to continue to move in the pocket and run those guys by him. And I think going into the game, you have to, as much sense as it makes on paper, I think you have to be careful reinventing yourself too much right before the biggest game of the season.
Completely fair. I mean, yeah, I guess the last you wind up with some regrets if whoever you put in there at left tackle is getting bullied consistently while
Right.
Jalen Carter's getting double teamed by everybody. I'm fascinated to see how the Chiefs handle that. On the other side of this, you mentioned you nailed the two of the biggest talking points in the Eagles Commanders game. I was chuckling all night in the AFC Championship game with the way that those two offenses were playing. I think the Bills went for it on fourth down 6 times in the game. Kansas City only once, but they got it. And obviously, both teams were phenomenal at converting in high leverage situations. I think the Chiefs were 5 of 9 on the day. They're second in the league at third down conversions. My question on this is less about matchups. And look, I know the stats are what they are. The Eagles are one of the best defenses, the best defense in the NFL. They have been for most of the season after a little bit of a slow start. My question with this is we know what Mahomes can do. We know Andy Reid is so good at putting players in conflict. And as good as they've been, this is still a lot of young defenders who haven't been on this stage. And I wonder if that is Kansas City's key to this matchup is putting Zach Bond and Oren Burke in conflicting situations, putting these young DBs in conflicting situations where you have to, choose correctly and just trying to take advantage of that. Or how do you see this? Because I think that's Kansas City's biggest edge is success in high leverage situations.
Yeah, I mean, they've built their entire run on it. I mean, they're not, they don't necessarily like blow everybody's doors off. I mean, even during the regular season, it's one score games, it's win at the end. It was the AFC Championship. We just saw it a couple days ago. They get the fourth down stop with the really good disguised pressure that everybody on the internet wants to dive into about whether Josh Allen could have seen it and slid the protection and not had to scramble. And again, that's a whole nother conversation. But fourth down, they get stops. Critical fourth down plays, they put the ball in the air and they pick up first downs. They run the running back traffic through the backside there on fourth down or on third down. They put the ball in the air. A lot of teams there are saying, hey, we don't want to throw it incomplete. We don't want to let them save a timeout if we have to attempt a field goal. And they just have so much confidence in the gotta have it moments. And it's not by accident. Yes, it's partly because Mahomes is the quarterback. Absolutely. But it's also because it's something that they understand they have to be really good at. You need to be really good and gotta have it moments. So what do? You practice it, you study it, you really dive into those games. They're not just throwing darts at the wall saying, hey, we'll figure out what 3rd and 5 looks like with the season on the line when we get there. Those are really in-depth conversations that Andy Reid and Matt Nagy and Mahomes and the whole group is sitting together during the week saying, hey, what does everybody feel like when this moment comes and we've got to have a 4th and short? What's our best play call? Okay, that's checked. Hey, 3rd and medium, but we're willing to throw it, but we want it to be a high percentage completion, but we've got to maintain possession and don't give them the ball back. What do we like? And they go through all of these situations. And then when all these games pop up from time and time again, week after week, year after year, it's not a coincidence that they have the right goal line play at the end of overtime last year to win the Super Bowl. And it's not a coincidence they had the right 3rd down play last week to, in essence, run the game out. These things don't just happen by chance. You don't just wing it. And again, I think Sirianni spends a lot of time doing it as well. I'm not suggesting he doesn't, but right now, the Mahomes, the Reid, that combination, end of game moments, you're going to have to be really good to beat them. And this game's going to come down to a handful of them, and the team that's able to win those matchups is going to win it.
I think it's got to help the Eagles to know that a huge chunk of their roster, their coaching staff has been in moments like this before. They were just in this game 2 years ago. So for a lot of these guys, you'd like to think that the moment won't be too big for anybody. I'm curious, your perspective as a former player, do you buy into the idea that a team like the Chiefs can beat you like before the game has even kicked off in terms of like just that the challenge that they present, I guess the mystique that goes along with consistently winning in big games like this, consistently winning in big moments. And I bring this up, maybe they would disagree with me, but it felt like you could feel the Bills pressing in that game because they know what it takes to beat the Chiefs. Do you think there's anything to that where you can sort of let the opponent be too big when it is a team that's accomplished this much?
Yeah, I think for certain matchups, that's certainly true, especially if the opponent of Kansas City hasn't played on this stage before, really came out of nowhere, or super young and inexperienced, right? If Washington wins last week, again, I think Dan Quinn would have them prepared. I think he's been there before. A lot of his staff is seasoned, but listen, it's a rookie quarterback. It's a lot of new guys. They're in a new place, and I think that probably be certainly a conversation to have. But the fact that Philly was just there 2 years ago with a lot of these guys, not necessarily everyone, but a lot of these guys 2 years ago, and same quarterback, same head coach, a lot of the same pieces on the offensive line, like they do have the ability. They say, hey, listen, we took them down to the end. If it wasn't for a fluke fumble pick, fumble recovery for a touchdown, we might be Super Bowl champions. So I actually think Philadelphia can draw, even though they lost. I think Philadelphia can draw on 2 years ago and say, hey, listen, we know they're great. We know they're historically special. What they've done is pretty much unprecedented with the exception of New England. And we were right there, and that was 2 years ago. We're better now. We're more seasoned. Our quarterback is better. Our head coach is more experienced. I think they can play it to their advantage if they handle it the right way. I don't think Philly's going to walk in there scared by any means.
I think that perfectly summarizes it. So that's where I'll leave it. But I think this Eagles team is better than it was 2 years ago. They're more seasoned. I think they'll be more confident, and it still might not matter because of what the Chiefs have over on that other sideline, whether it's Andy Reid, obviously Patrick Mahomes. I always want to make sure I mention Chris Jones in these conversations. I don't think he gets enough love, but I mean, the last one was a classic. I'm guessing this one's going to be pretty damn good too. So I appreciate it, Greg, and we'll see how it plays out, man.
All right, appreciate you. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks as always to Greg for stopping by the show. I've appreciated his insights all season long. And thank y'all for tuning in. And please keep tuning in because this is just the beginning. We've got so much coverage coming during Super Bowl week. We will be in New Orleans later on this week. We'll have so much live coverage, so much news, updates, analysis, all that good stuff you've come to expect. Make sure you're keeping an eye on the feed. Go find us on Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Apple Podcast works too. It doesn't matter. Whichever app you prefer, you can find us there. You can find us on YouTube as well. We will be here all week long. We've got you covered for all things Super Bowl 59. So until then, I appreciate it as always, and I will talk to y'all soon.